Son, and of the Holy Spirit, God is one. Amen. Well, good morning, everybody. As you can see, I'm using a different method of videoing this one today. That's because I've left the other thing at home rather than bring it with me. So I'm going to find it a little bit difficult to read everything everybody's going to say because this light is shining into my eyes. But good morning, Anthony. I can see you there, and I won't be able to read back what you said later on either. Good morning, Dino. God bless you. And the things they disappear very rapidly like this as well. It's a cold day today, but it's a beautiful day. Really, really nice. I'm just going to adjust it slightly. There we go. That gives you the same sort of thing you normally see. Good morning, Joan. God bless you. I hope things are going well for you. And I saw snow, a video of snow down in Jobil, which was pretty shocking for Lebanon. I hope it's beginning to get a bit better where you are at least. So there we go. Maybe you went to Dar Siman the other day. Let's see how that got on. Morning, Teresa. Right, spring is coming. Well, hopefully. Good morning, Beverly, as well. We shall see. It gets warmer, then it gets colder again. February the 2nd, I think, was always regarded as being the first day of spring. Good morning, June. Who's it, John? Yes, good morning, John, and also good morning, Christina. Right, I'm probably not going to be able to answer people's questions today unless I just catch them as they go. So there's Alex there as well. Good morning as well. Today we're going to be looking at Luke chapter 5. Good morning, Anton. Happy very, 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 very tiny Friday. Chapter 5, verses 4 through to 11. I'm doing this on my phone, so people's comments appear and then they disappear very quickly indeed. So I probably won't be able to answer you. Jesus is sitting in Simon Peter's boat, and he's been teaching the people, and it carries on there. Good morning, and Gary. But when he had stopped speaking, he said to Simon, "Launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." But Simon answered and said to him, "Master, we have toiled all night and caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net." And when they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their net was breaking. So they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both the boats, so that they began to sink. Then Simon Peter saw it. When Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all that were with him were astonished at the catch of fish which they had taken, and so also James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will catch men." So when they had brought their boats to land, they forsook all and followed him. It's quite an interesting little pericope, this one, because amongst other things, if you look at Matthew and Mark, you'll see that they tell different stories about how the apostles came to join the Lord. And look at John, and they tell a different story again. So Matthew and Mark tell more or less the same story. Luke is somewhat different, and John is completely different. They tend to follow the Lord after they have met him, when they have been with John the Forerunner and Baptist. So despite everything, we're not really quite certain what happened. And this leads people to think, with this particular account here, that it may well be that the account in John chapter 21, and this account are based on the same historical background. In other words, the post-resurrection appearance to St. Peter and to the apostles by the Sea of Galilee, and this point here are in fact the same story, but then redacted in two different ways. And does it matter? Well, probably not. Because the purpose of the story is not historical, but theological in the end. Well, Perkins suddenly decided to start singing, so that's quite interesting. He must be seeing the sunshine. He always does that when it begins sunny. Okay, here we go. So verse 4. First of all, the Lord has completed what he's saying, and he then turns to Simon, and you'll notice in a few moments Simon is called Peter, even though he doesn't get the name Simon Peter or Peter from the Lord until rather later. And he says to him, launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch. The word for deep there is bathos, and it's worthwhile remembering that at that time they thought that the world was surrounded with a great bathos, a great measureless deep that went down forever. And the world, it sort of set on there, and then the sky was also more water above. I think they didn't really think that, because for some 300 years they already knew that the world was a globe, well before 300 years, in fact. But in the popular mind, they thought about the land, and then you have the sea, and underneath it you have the bathos. But it gave the idea of this dangerous and mysterious deep. The Church Fathers say it's like the dangerous and mysterious depth of God, which is in itself essentially mysterious and beyond understanding. You have to remember from this, of course, they had no scuba diving equipment or diving equipment like we might have, and they didn't have submarines and things, so a lot of what we think of as the great depth of the sea is no longer as mysterious as it was then. Then you could swim down maybe 30 meters and hold your breath and have a look to see what's underneath. But after a while, you can't swim down any further. So the deep itself was unknown and mysterious. And the Church Fathers talk about this mysterious depth, the mystery of God. Particularly St. Ambrose goes a bundle on this one. Verse 5. But Simon answered and said to him, Master, we have toiled all night and caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net. The first one there is this word, master. It's not the normal one you might expect. Usually say Lord or Rabbi, Rabbi or teacher, Daskalos, Rabbi's Rabbi, or Lord, Kyrios. But here they use this other word, epistata. And epistata, it was a sort of a captain, a lord, somebody of a commander, somebody of very high status indeed. And it's interesting, only really Luke uses this, and he uses it quite often, and 13 times or so, I think, when people are talking about the Lord, Master, epistata. It's got the same root as episkopos, that Lord there as well. Okay, episkopos, Lord. So later on it comes to be used, and in some of the letters of St. Paul to Timothy and others, he talks about his episkopos, and that first little bit there, epis, is the same root as this one here. So an unusual word and a very Lucan word, and a way of telling that Luke has written something. Okay, only used in Luke, not used anywhere else, except when really talking about episcopacy, bishopric, to St. Timothy and others like that. Okay? Now, so Simon Peter starts off, master, commander, whatever you say. But you know what? We have, and the word for toil here means worked really hard. We slaved at it all night, and caught nothing. And the sensible thing to do now is that Simon Peter finishes off washing and drying his nets, has something to eat, and goes and tucks himself up in bed for the day. So he's ready to crack on and do some fishing the next day. But he then carries on. Nevertheless, at your word, and it's not logos here, nevertheless, at your word, we will do this. Okay, we'll do that. And they push off into the bathos. Now, fish during the day in a lake don't snap around in that sort of, where it gets hot and where the surface of the lake warms up. They don't come to the surface because there's not much oxygen there. What they do is they sink down into the depth where there's more oxygen, because the oxygen can dissolve itself better into cooler water rather than warm water. This is why it is that when you boil a kettle, you begin to see little tiny bubbles forming, and these bubbles then come out. And if you listen to a kettle carefully, you'll see it goes through a whole series stages of noise, don't you? And the final one, the first one, is you hear this sort of sissing sound, and that's all the dissolved air in the water coming out of the water. And it's for this reason the fish dive down deep, because as the water warms up on the surface, so they can't breathe, or they have to snap along on top of the surface of the water, so they dive down deep into the cooler water where there's more oxygen. As the kettle warms up, so that actually disappears and goes quiet for a moment if you listen carefully. I wonder if you ever listen carefully to a kettle boiling. And then you get water that is turning into steam, into gas, and then going back into being water again. It's not quite warm enough for the whole bubble of water, gas, steam to reach the surface of the water. And that has its own particular sound. Then they begin coming to the surface and popping and so on. And that is the fourth one. Then you get the rolling sound of the boiling water, where all the water is at boiling temperature now, and you get a completely different sound yet again. I have no idea what that's got to do with the scripture, nothing whatever. Oh dear, oh dear. Anyway, so the fish won't come to the surface, they dive down deeper. And also during the day, they're more likely to get caught by fish eagles and stuff and other predators. What are those things called? Pelicans. So they dive down, and they've worked hard all the time. But anyway, at your remati, at your word, we will go out. Okay? And then verse 6. And when they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their net was breaking. At the point of breaking, that means. And we'll carry on. So they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and filled both the boats, so that they began to sink. Now we can take these two things together. First of all, there's a huge number of fish, a completely surprising number of fish. They're not expecting to get any at all. St. John Chrysostom says, did you notice, he says, the way that with fishermen, they are called and made astonished by fish. But with the wise men, the stargazers, they are called and they're made astonished by seeing a star. And the shepherds, they receive word about God around their sheep. And the Lord uses what you're used to in order to surprise you and bring you to faith. Now, I think that's quite an important thing. We need to think also about how we adapt or think about the good news, the evangelion, in a way that immediately gives other people, as it were, hooks that they can then hang the good news upon. Now the shepherds, the sheep, the stargazers, the magi, the star, these fishermen, the fish. And in having something to hang it on, they can then begin to come to Christ himself. really important. That is a tricky thing. In this congregation here, it's amazing how many people are interested in Dungeons and Dragons or other games like that, or they are interested in Warhammer. And I've been thinking the last few days, that's interesting. How do you, I guess actually we've already done it, but what is it about, how might one use that sort of interest to, as it were, fish more people out of that particular pond? Others are musicians. What do we have about musical stuff that we can fish people out of that musical pond? Other people are artists. How can we fish people out of that? And we do actually have people like that. We have artists, we have linguists, people interested in linguistics and languages, people interested in games, have people interested in archaeology, have people interested in art and in music, and we fish people out of those ponds already. We're not particularly good in this congregation about fishing people out of sort of the academic pond, whereas I know in many other Orthodox congregations, quite a large number of the congregation is actually from an academic pond. Neither are we particularly good about fishing people out of the business class pond, as it were, and out of the shopping experience pond. So it might be worthwhile thinking along those lines, because different people have, as it were, a different sort of agora, a different forum in which you can go fishing for them. Similarly, I don't think we've got many people in this particular congregation here who are highly sportive. I know an awful lot of people who are very sportive, but we don't have anybody here in this congregation who, say, plays football or rugby or goes to the gym, or, well, we have one or two people who go to the gym. Anton does that as well. Okay, so that's quite an important thing. I've just seen somebody talk about transients. We have quite a number of people who transition through this area, and some of them are students, some of them work in the factories and other places around here as well. We don't have anybody at all who actually works on the land at the moment. Sport pond, exactly. Go and fish out the gym bunnies, even the bunnies are the gym bunnies. Okay. But we don't actually, not very many. The odd one or two, but not people who are absolutely fanatical about that sort of thing. And it's worthwhile thinking about. If you think about all the different sort of things that where people get involved in life, and that becomes their agora, their forum, this is where Christian mission needs to be. You find them where they are, and you fish them from within that pond. You don't take them out of that pond and leave them behind entirely, because once they have come from that pond, you then catch other fish using the fish you first caught. So Peter, James, John, Andrew will be better at fishing for other fishermen. Anyway, there we go. Anyway, worthwhile thinking about things like that. Teachers are better at catching other teachers. Businessmen are better at catching other businessmen. There used to be a Christian businessman's lunch here in Lincoln once a month that I used to be invited to. Was it lunch? It was breakfast once a month. I used to be invited to, and there used to be a man's breakfast for men, not for women, a men's breakfast once a month in a village near here that I was invited to come and give talks to, and that was interesting. Obviously, the church itself has to be called out from every different direction, but it's interesting to think that actually you get different fish in different ponds, and to think about, okay, you might go fishing for women in this particular pond, men in this different pond, teenagers in another pond, and so on. And think carefully about the sort of hook, bait, tackle, everything else. Terry, who comes to this church, is a great fisherman, and Father George also does a lot of fishing, and they will tell you all about different hooks, different baits, different ways of catching different types of fish. And it's worthwhile thinking about when we're thinking about Christian mission. We're not, of course, catching them to eat. We're catching a stinking fish to make it into a beautiful angel, as it were. Okay, so there we are. Verse 7. How on earth did that come about? So they signal to their partners. Do you notice the word they there? So they signal to their partners. We only have mention of Simon Peter in this boat, but it's a they, and the they doesn't include the Lord. So who is at least one other person? And we can get a clue about this by looking at the other Gospels. At the same time as Simon Peter was fished out of his boat, so is Andrew, his brother. So I think although he's not mentioned here, the other person in the boat will be Andrew. So you've got Peter and Andrew who are being pulled out of this particular boat, and they are signaling towards their partners, who we know are James and John, the sons of Zebedee, okay, in the other boat, to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. The fathers of the church go on and on about the two boats. I think a lot of what they say, forgive me for saying so, is a load of nonsense, and certainly the sort of thing to make modern academics chortle. But anyway, there we go. But the thing is, the boats begin to sink. We've already had mention of the idea before that the grace of God completely fills whatever the vessel it is that God is choosing to fill. God doesn't give a little bit of grace. And later on, we hear about, from St. Paul, the grace of God being packed down, shaken together, squashed in. And here we have an example of this. They don't go fishing and catch enough fish for the day. They catch an astounding number of fish, to the point where they are almost brain dead with amazement afterwards. It's an enormously amazing thing. And that same grace of God happens now. You notice? You overcome your own doubt. Simon Peter says, we've been fishing all night. We've been working hard all night, caught nothing. And then you act in obedience. But at your remati, your word, we will get on and do it. And then what God does is give you something infinitely greater than you can imagine. They might have imagined a basket full of fish, a few fish in the bottom, enough for breakfast. No, thanks very much to me for the loan of your bed. Here you are, here's 10 quid. Bed, boat, but instead of which, here's a month's pay, enough to keep your family going for some little while you come and do something different. Filled both boats so that they began to sink. And the Greek really means they were on the point of sinking. They're so full of fish that the boat, if you think about the size of these boats, what do we say, 27 feet long, 7 feet wide? That's going to be able to hold quite a lot. So absolutely packed full of fish, astounding number. And they got that to land. They could dry the whole lot. Mrs. Simon Peter, crack on and do all of that. It probably was her job to do that. And she'd be in fish and therefore in money for some little while to come, while the Lord went off with her hubby. Okay. Peter's reaction, verse 8. When Simon Peter, note the difference in name now, when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." Kyrios this time, no longer commander. And you get the idea now that Peter's reaction to him has gone up a huge level. Commander, boss, Okay, boss. No, no longer boss. Lord. Kyrios, Mister. But it was used much more sparingly then than it is now. It's like everybody in this country now is Esquire, whereas not long ago, very few people were Esquire. Everybody in this country is now Mr. or Master, whereas a little while ago, they have to go back very many years. That Mr. or Master was an honorific, and everybody else is just some, people like me back then would have been some nobody, that one, you, dog, come here. And so Peter's reaction has gone upwards. And Peter says to him, "Depart from me." Now, why does he say, "Depart from me"? Do you know how it is when you feel deeply uncomfortable because somebody has told you something about yourself that rings so deeply true within you that you sort of gulp? I wish you would shut up. Well, this is what's really happened with St. Peter. The Lord's action has had the reaction in him of making him completely see himself. Completely. He's okay before. He's a fisherman. He gets on with stuff. He's been doing it most of his life. But now suddenly Peter sees his own self right the way through, from the front of him, right the way through to the marrow of the backbone, or the marrow of his legs. And he can see himself exactly as God sees him too. This is deeply uncomfortable. And he says, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man." Now, Satan wants each of us to act in the same way. He wants us, when you fall into sin, you do something that you know is bad. I don't know. People watch a lot of bad things on the internet nowadays. And people, they lie and they cheat and do all sorts of fun stuff, like we always have done. Or we guzzle too much alcohol or eat too much food and become big porkers and that sort of thing. And when you see yourself as you really are, you come to your senses, as it were, and you notice the sort of person you really are. What Satan wants you to do then is say, "Depart from me, Lord. Now go away from me because I'm a bad man. I'm a bad woman. You really don't want anything to do with me, Lord. This is not good for us, not good for you. Leave me alone so that I don't feel so ashamed." That's what Satan wants you to do. But do you notice, although St. Peter says to the Lord, "Depart from me, Lord," the Lord doesn't depart. He stays. And that is the reaction of the Lord. We might say, "Oh, I'm so ashamed. I really cannot bring myself to communion this week. I really can't go to church. Think of the way I've been behaving this last week or last month or last year. I just can't, I'll be a hypocrite of hypocrites if I do that." Well, that's the very moment you need to go to church and say, walk in and say, "Look, see this?" You don't see this publicly because everybody's a hypocrite. You walk in, and the very centre of every priest statue there's a hypocrite. You walk in and you look at the Lord, you say, "I know I'm a hypocrite. And I still wish to be loved by you." And the Lord doesn't depart, he stays. Not only that, but actually he can then begin to make use of you. It's people who know that they are sinful that the Lord can use and do things with, because, as you said before, it's the sick who need a doctor, not those people who are well, or those people who think they're well. So, yeah, good stuff. Because verse 9, "For he," that's St. Peter, "and all who were with him," as James, John, Andrew, "were astonished at the catch of fish. They were mind blown by it, which they had taken. So also James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Boanerges, sons of thunder. I think this is where they got their nickname. Zebedee was the thunderer, and they were the sons of thunder. And I think that he wasn't very pleased when they just disappeared like they do in the next verse here. Okay? But this then leads to the punchline. We don't really care about the rest of it. The punchline is just coming. They're all astonished, and they're all of them partners of Simon. And Jesus says to Simon, do not be afraid. You remember those words? Me for vous, me for vous. Not afraid. Where else have we seen it? We're going to have it again. We've seen it. The angel says the same to Zacharias. The angel says the same to Theotokos, Mary, the Mother of God. The angel said to the shepherds, don't be afraid. And now it's said to Simon. And it's the same all the way through. It's a miracle that's taking place. Zacharias is more than afraid. The miracle is he's no longer afraid. He can now discuss things with the angel. The Mother of God is afraid. She's no longer afraid. She can now discuss things with the angel. The shepherds are no longer afraid. They can discuss things with the angel. And even before they go, they head off and towards Bethlehem. And now what you have is that Simon is no longer afraid. He is able also to do something similar as well. Okay, I'm sorry, I won't be able to read what you've written because I'm doing this on my phone. It just disappears very quickly. So you have all of these things happening. And you'll also have later on, don't be afraid, in Luke chapter 12, where he's talking to them. I think it's verse 32, where he says, don't be afraid, little flock. And he's saying to them, you're going to lose everything, you know, but don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of this, because it's the Father's good will to give you the kingdom. So you're going to lose everything, but you'll receive the kingdom. This is a good swap to have. So now you're not afraid. Now you can receive the kingdom. So this me for vous is a healing command, and it's been given to these other people as well. Don't be afraid. And then we have another very Lucan thing to say. From now on. Okay, apotonin. Apotonin. From now on. And Luke uses this when you come to a really important change in direction. The Lord has not had any apostles, disciples until now. From now on, he's going to. And we'll come across this several times in Luke Acts, where something really interesting happens. From now on, something new. Okay? And what's this new? From now on, you are going to be fishers of men. And the word there, men, is anthropy, which means men and women. You're going to be human fishers, fishers of human beings. Not just here in Galilee, not just here in Judea, not just around Samaria and Jerusalem, but in the end, the ends of the earth. So I think we can say that this turned out to be quite an important day for Simon Peter, Andrew, James and John, and their families. Zebedee throwing a fit in his blood. And not the first parent who's got cross with their child for following the Lord. And maybe also for Simon Peter's wife, who, as we know from St. Paul, got herself dragged all over the world as well. And Andrew, who disappears off, he goes everywhere. He goes Sogdiana, Afghanistan nowadays. He goes to Archangel in northern Russia. And he goes maybe even as far south as Great Zimbabwe and over to Scotland, throwing a huge cross on the earth. So it's a big day for them. So when it says in verse 11, so when they had brought their boats to land, out of the bathos, they forsook all and followed him. This tiny little verse here, tiny little verse, hides that complete change in life that had overcome them. They just dropped their nets, left their boats, and off they went. They followed him. And that's really amazing. Right now, I can't read a single word that you've written, so unfortunately I won't be able to comment on any of it unless somebody writes something right now, and I might even be able to read it before it disappears off. So, no, nobody's written anything there. I'd like you to carry on, please, praying. Let's pray for Judy today, particularly. Judy recovering from a stroke, for her health and salvation, for strength, and for continually getting better. You can see there is improvement. She's like writing longer and longer messages to us, which is good. Look after her. And we'll also pray for Anne with her pancreatic cancer. Also for Steve, who is also very poorly. Pray for him, please, and for his wife, who's called Barbara. Pray for Andrew, who has cancer as well. Keep him in your hearts. We're praying, of course, for Dino's Simon, and for Dino, and for Joseph and his mother, Erin. Pray for all of them. Okay? By and by, we'll start praying for some of those who have died already as well, asking God's blessing upon them. Also pray for Alistair, Finlay's brother, also very, very ill, and Adele. Pray for her too. Okay, so pray for each other. Pray also for the church in this area, and also for the monastery. There are big things that all of us need to do with here, the churches around here. There are people who probably need to be ordained. They need to be prayed for. And the church here in Lincoln and the monastery, which is 150 miles away from here, somehow or other, they need to find themselves more a way of being not combined but more united. I'm the bit in the jigsaw puzzle that fits both the monastery and this church here together, and the church here in Lincoln together. So if you could pray for a bit of wisdom for me, I'd be more than grateful. It's sometimes a bit difficult to know what to do about these things. Sometimes it's always difficult to know about what to do about it. So please keep me in your prayers, and I will continue to pray for you. Meanwhile, happy Chinese New Year. Yep, full moon tonight. There we go. I don't know what it is. The year of something or other. Cockerel, dog, dragon, pig, is it? Donkey, maybe? I don't know. Snake? Is snake rat? All these things go in and out of my mind. Somebody says I'm a good fisherman. Anton does. I have actually tried fishing. Not for people, but for things. And tiger, the tiger said, oh ho, that's an exciting thing. Somebody's late to join, can't see who you are, but God bless you. I have to listen again. My eyesight isn't too good, and it's very bright, and I can only just read what's being said. The tiger, that sounds quite exciting, doesn't it? There we go. All right, God bless you. Tomorrow, hopefully, I'll be able to read more of what you've written. If there's anything you've written, any questions or anything, then by sometime this afternoon, I'll be able to read them on the other computer, and I'll look and see what we can do for you. Okay? Your prayers. God bless you. I have to touch this. Orthodox Church, 60 miles from me. Keep praying, etc., etc. I can't see who it is saying that, but God bless you. When I first became Orthodox, or trying to become Orthodox, I had to go out 7 miles. It was 160 miles each way to go to church. Nowadays, here in this country, we don't normally have to travel anything like that amount of distance. So things are slowly getting better, and they get better all the way through the whole world. Slowly, slowly catching monkey. Our main problem is we all want everything to happen for us. And when you think about, okay, the nearest church is a long way off, then that's time to say to yourself, maybe God is saying to me that I need to found a church near here, like round the corner, and find a priest. Maybe I'm the one who ought to be ordained, and such stuff like that. Okay? Your prayers, God bless you.